Hi everyone, welcome to my talk and embrace your flaky test. Before we go further, a little bit about me. My name is Suman Bala. I'm a lead QA at Sky UK. I've been testing for nearly 15 years and I absolutely love it. I'm a strong believer in automation because then you can spend more time doing fun things like exploit testing and others. I'm an emerging accessibility advocate, and I've been coaching the wider teams to make sure we have accessible products. When I moved to UK a few years ago, I faced some challenges. So I'm highly invested in creating a diverse and inclusive workspace. Recently, I got an opportunity to contribute to the Testing Stories book with an aim to inspire others. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend getting yourself a copy because testers across the globe have some awesome stories to share. Today, I'm going to talk about flaky stigma, and it hits us hard, not only in just one or two projects, but multiple projects across multiple teams, and how we took this opportunity to look deeper into our state and educate everyone. I do remember in one of the talks, Richard Bradshaw said, flakiness is something that doesn't occur or doesn't happen. We let this happen. And when I look back, that's the same thing happened to us. But if you can create the flakiness, you can improve it too. And evil Flaky hit us, stabbed us every single time. I wanted to ask Alan if evil tester is inspired from evil Flaky. So, for those who don't know who is evil Flaky, it's the cartoon character in Happy Tree Friends cartoon series, not the sort of cartoon I recommend everyone to watch. So back to the flaky thing. We were scared while deploying to production. And the reason we were scared was every single release was challenging. It took us 2 weeks to do a manual regression for one app on one platform. And we were supporting multiple territories and multiple platforms. And it felt like all the time we were in regression cycle. We had zero energy to look into the improvements. We knew there are lots of things we want to improve. We want to improve our infrastructure. We want to improve our test environments. We want to improve, have a better testability of the app. But we just didn't have time because we were continuously pushed by the product owner and they wanted that particular feature yesterday. So we were already behind. At this stage, we did have some of the automation checks in place, but the team has no trust in it. And I can think of two main reasons. One, the visibility. Visibility was poor. The developers didn't know what the status of automation check is because the automation tests were in different repo than the app code. And the second, the test results were inconsistent. But when we spoke to the testers, it was just not about the test, which is poorly written. And not all the tests were poorly written, to be honest. There were other underlying problems as well. There were problems with the testability. There were problems with the infrastructure. There were problems with the network. There were problems with accounts. It felt like we were building on a pile or we were building a sand castle. So last year, I was working with the team, and we were working on a legacy platform. The automation framework was quite old, written around like 5 to 7 years ago, and it was written. The tests were written by the testers who were new to the testing, who were learning the coding. So the test was actually quite poor. When I discussed with the team and I told them, let's start from scratch, some of the testers on the team were offended, had no intentions to offend anyone, but they were just not ready to let it go. They thought I'm blaming their code, but our the framework was actually poor and I wanted a fresh start because sometimes that's what you need. Eventually, they told me they can tackle it. It's fine, even it's old, it's okay, it works. But how it was working, they were rerunning the test until they pass. But don't do that because Flaky will come back and it will stab you hard. I've lost the count how many times it stabbed us, and it came to a point where just we didn't want to do anything with automation. No one wanted to touch that framework. No one wanted to improve the failures, but we were just writing test on top of test, and the part was really big. We had probably 50 odd tests, but the value was not even worth two pennies. So once the automation testers on the team were on leave and I had to support a regression. So I was told, run this automation pack. And I couldn't see it running in the pipeline because the pack was so poorly written, it was not even fit to run in the pipeline. So I was told by the team, run it locally. And for nearly 4 to 5 hours, I keep rerunning the test and it never passed. Something else will fail every single time. And in the end, I ended up doing a manual regression for that particular release. Automation wasn't fun anymore. Automation is supposed to be fun. This is something I really enjoy. And that day, I didn't enjoy rerunning those tests. After the release, when I looked deeper into the framework, how we can fix it, why I was seeing inconsistent results, I came across lots of patches. There were patches to fix a test. There were patches to fix a fix. And I lost count of how many at the rate ignore were there. So eventually, I got to the team and we decided let's not write any more patches. Let's do something different. Even if it will take time, it will be worth it. But then, how did we reduce the flakiness? One simple thing, you can't have a flaky test if you don't write test, right? Because if there's no test, it won't be flaky. But that's not the solution because I'm a lazy person. So I don't want to do all that monotonous checks every single day. I will get bored to death. Like I said, I've been testing for nearly 15 years and I absolutely love it. But if I have to repeat that manual checks every single day, those repetitive, boring checks, I don't think I want to be tested anymore then. And I want to, attend these workshops, these conferences. If I'm doing manual checks, there's no time to do that, isn't it? So for me, having no test was not the solution. We need to do something different. So we did lots of improvements. Let's talk about this. The very first thing we did was a game changer. We reduced the number of UI tests, and it did help because before it was taking 2 hours to run all the tests in the framework, but reducing the number of UI tests did help a lot. And how did we made sure like which test should we automate? We referred to a workshop by Angie Jones. She did a talk on which test should we automate 2 or 3 years ago, where Angie talked about not just automate your test based on your gut feeling, but also refer to the risk, value of the test, cost efficiency, and history of failure. If a test or if a feature is prone to bugs, then probably it's not worth automating it. For the cost efficiency, I have a really good example. Once, one of my testers spent 5 days to write a test, and that test was taking 8 minutes to run in a pipeline. And if I tell you what the test was, you would probably ask, why on the earth would you do that? So he was writing a test to automate terms and condition page. And he told me the reason it took him 5 days to automate it is because on every operating system, the scrolling functionality is behaving differently. And lower the operating system is, the more time it's taking. But is it cost efficient? Because if I have to do that test manually, it will take me probably like less than 30 seconds. Then why would you automate something like that, which is going to take 8 minutes? So weigh, where the cost efficiency is and what this value is providing me. And what's the risk? And I also want to thank Richard and Mark for the TRIMS mnemonic. This mnemonic is designed by Mark and Richard as part of automation in testing, and this mnemonic really helps you to talk around your automation checks. So TRIMS stands for targeted, reliable, informative, maintainable, and speedy check. So for all the tests, upcoming tests, we looked into this, which target layer we need to do. Should we write this test on a UI layer, or should we move it down to API? Or shall we just write this test for our database? So we looked into different layers and we moved our test accordingly. And then when we talked about Trim's mnemonic and Angie's workshop, we also made sure everyone was involved and everyone was accountable. We involved not just developers and testers, we also involved our business analysts and product owners, so that everyone was on the same page. Everyone knew the challenges we had to solve, and we were realistic with timescales. Once everyone was on board, everyone has a buy-in, things makes your life will be so easy. For us, it definitely made hell lot of a difference. First thing, if you remember, I told the team didn't have a trust because the test code was in a different repo. This is the first thing we resolved very straight away. We moved our test code in the same repo as app code so we can keep it the same love which it needs. But then we saw some challenges even after moving the test code into the same repo. Now, yes, the team had a visibility, but the testers were not getting as much support. The developers wanted to give the support, but they didn't know about the tool. Um, w- on one project, our test was in Selenium and in Java, in Gherkin style, and another project we were using Appium for mobile automation. Developers wanted to contribute. They just said, we just don't the language. So we started writing the test in the same language as the app code. Having the same language, we got the required technical support from the devs. And it was now not only just 1 or 2 person in the team cared about the test, everyone could contribute, everyone could improve. We also did said no to absolute experts. Do not use an agile because quite often you will introduce a new functionality in your code. And when you say, okay, get me the third element, that not might be the element you want to use for your test. So we said big no to this. In the worst case, we will use the relative expert. But we also came up with a contract. We said we are going to decide element IDs upfront. So we don't have to use whether it's absolute or relative, no experts. We decided element type IDs in upfront during the Amigo session. This also means that we also reduce the tech debt on the automation because now we were writing our automation checks in parallel with the feature development. In one of the team, we write test before we write features because we say we are writing feature for the test not other way around. Another thing we introduced was follow campsite rule. Every method should have a startup and a tear down method. If you use some test data, clean it up. Be a good citizen. If you're creating a mess, clean it up. And we also wrote made sure all the tests were independent of each other. So if one test fails, it doesn't cause failure for others. Also, because the tests were independent of each other, it may it made to investigate that failure bit easy as compared to just looking into a spaghetti loop. We also started writing unit tests. And here I don't mean the unit test for the feature development, I mean unit test for the complex. So any method which had a conditional logic or complexity should have a unit test. And so we also made sure we provide some governance. We had some coding practices and keep it simple. When we were looking into the previous automation framework, some of the scenarios has 20 odd steps. This time we said we will keep it simple, we'll keep it granular. Each feature or test feature should just try to cover just one thing. Do not do log in, log out, check out everything in one. Just do one thing at a one time. We also introduced code reviews. Initially, for the automation ones, there was some code reviews and some tests were directly merged into master. But this time we came up with a context and we said each code will have at least more than one code reviews, otherwise it's not getting into the master. So and when we say more than one code review, we also said the code review should be done by at least one developer and at least one tester, so everyone is happy before it's merged. We also implemented visual checks. One of the senior tester in the team had zero confidence in automation. She just says, I don't believe automation. We are here for testing. So if I don't see it with my eyes, the test didn't happen. I'm not sure whether, so I don't work with that team now, so I'm not sure whether that thing has changed or not. But adding a visual check did improve the confidence in checks a lot. And if your function test doesn't have visual checks, are you actually doing the testing? How can you make sure? So visual checks was another game changer. We were working on the environment where you will start using some test data and someone else will change that environment, data on the environment, and it was causing problems. So we made sure we are not sharing test environment with multiple teams. Each team would have their own dedicated test environments. And we made multiple copies of test environments, so we are not blocked by work, or we are not blocked by anyone else. Everyone could work, so we had multiple test environment copies. We also made sure we had a dedicated test accounts. Initially, we were using the same account for our manual regression as well as automation. But when someone is running the test, they are changing the role for one of the project, which was for the Sky Sports and Sky News. Same accounts were used, but when you change the role, it messes up the functionality. So we made sure now we have a dedicated test accounts for automation run as well as dedicated accounts for manual checks. We also introduced mocking. With mocking, we were able to isolate and focus on the code being tested and not we don't have to worry about the external dependencies. We used mock for mocking. I know there are multiple services you can use. If you can, if there's any other mocking services you're using in your projects, let me know. I'm always open to ideas. Wait for me. So intelligent waits. No more thread.sleep. In the past, I have seen thread.sleep for like 5 milliseconds, 5 seconds or so, or maybe 10 seconds, because even five wasn't enough. But now we introduced intelligent waits. This means we will wait for the element to appear before we will action. Every depending on different network condition, your device settings, or the state of the device, like older device might be a bit slow. So having an intelligent wait means you are reducing the flakiness here. Another thing we introduced was assertions. We said we are going to have we are going to look into the best practices to have error handling and console logs. And if a test fails, then assert it. Don't just stop the entire run. We also did Slack integration. So for every run, there was a Slack bot notification. How many tests passed, how many tests failed. It might sound a bit annoying when you are seeing lots of notification, but sometimes once you have that visibility, once you're like getting annoyed by all those checks saying 20 test failed, 50 test failed, or this took us like half an hour to run it, or any particular device took longer than it should, then people start caring. So having a visibility uh, is a was a good thing to do. Another thing we did was dashboards. We introduced dashboard for every run with every commit whenever we were running tests. We were also running tests nightly. One thing I made one of my team member to do is for every failure, there was a really sharp blood red color we choose. And I remember when I told the team member, we'll use this color for the failure. And he said, it hurts. And I was like, yes, it should hurt. Failure should hurt because when it will hurt, we will fix it. Another thing we did was we improved observability of our infrastructure. So observability in nutshell is ability to ask questions from outside and so that you can have understanding of the inside system. By improving observability, we also improved the tracing and logging, and we were able to trace errors quickly. Health checks. So we did regular health checks for our test code, for app code, for infrastructure, for accounts, for our dashboards, for pipelines, literally everything. We did regular health checks. So if this is something you already do, let me know what other health checks you're already following. Environments. So our test environment is still not a true replica of production. Some of the test environments are in really poor state, and this is something we have a target to achieve by end of 2021, that our test environments will be the true representation of production. This means whatever test will run on UAT or stage, we will know this test will work on production. Or to be honest, we want to get to a confidence where we are running our test in production directly. We came up with a team contract, and there were few things, not just improving the things. We said we won't ignore flaky anymore, whether it's the flakiness in the test, or it's the flakiness in infrastructure, or we need to improve our network. We won't ignore it anymore. Either we are going to fix it, or we are going to pin it. And sometimes you have to win it to win it, because the legacy project I was working with, it was such poorly written, the infrastructure was poor, everything was falling apart. There's no um, way to improve the existing one, then bin it and start from scratch, because you will thank yourself in that case. And happy automation. If there are any other improvements you are doing which you think we should consider, let me know in the chat. And thank you.